We love you!
Hello and welcome to Tribe Talk, the Galway Hurling podcast, with me, Patrick Earley, and David Connors, where each week we'll discuss and divulge all the goings-on in Galway hurling. We'll be taking an in-depth look at the club scene and, of course, focusing on inter-county. In this, Shane O'Neill's first year at the helm, all of which we'll do in the company of some special guests and former Galway greats. So do come along and join us on Tribe Talk, Galway's dedicated hurling podcast.
Well, the Galway team has just been announced for tomorrow's All-Ireland quarter-final against Tip. Throw in at the strange, I suppose, time, 1:15 on a Saturday. Not something we're used to anyhow, but team has been named. Two changes, probably two that most would have predicted after last week, with Sean Loftus and Niall Burke dropping out, and Aidan Harte and David Burke that comes in for Niall Burke in attack. So that was kind of the one that was up for speculation small, but as to whether Jason Flynn or David Burke might come in there. But in fairness, David Burke's cameo, you couldn't argue with it. Two points in a 15-minute spell, very impressive. So we'll give you the full team anyhow. Aidan Murphy's in goal. Full back line of Aidan Harte, Dahi Burke and Shane Cooney. Half back line, Fintan Burke, Garage McInerney, Joseph Cooney. Midfield, you have Pádraig Mannion and Johnny Cohen. Half forward lines, Joe Canning, Cathal Mannion and David Burke. And inside, you have Brian Kincannon, Conor Cooney and Conor Whelan. And then just to run down through the subs, you have James Cahill, the replacement goalie. Then Darren Morrissey, TJ Brennan, Sean Loftus, Adrian Toohey, all options in the back. Evan Nyland, Jason Flynn, Sean Linan, Niall Burke, Jam Mannion and Jack Grealish. So nothing overly groundbreaking there, David. I suppose there was a bit of a curveball thrown last week with the likes of Hart being dropped and maybe Niall Burke coming in, but much along the lines of what we would have expected this weekend. Kind of hard to argue with it, really, isn't it?
That's for sure. It's I suppose in hindsight now it's easy to say, but this is probably our strongest team on paper, probably our strongest 15 if you were looking at just on the form so far this year and everything. I suppose it'll be very hard to. We'll start with maybe Davy Burke versus probably just his experience in the game against Tip. It's very hard to leave out, especially after he got 2 points the last day and he looked kind of well back to fitness. So maybe that kind of role there, maybe in the half forward line, maybe margin back a bit deeper. It's not probably a traditional wing forward line where you just stay out wide and you wait for the ball to come in. He'll probably be given plenty license to forage back. So maybe that might take a bit of the pressure off, Joe and Cahill and let them focus on attack. We don't know, because in fairness, Tip are probably going to operate with a fairly orthodox system. So that should probably suit Galway in a way. You know what I mean? Like I know we went with a sweeper last time out. I suppose the only other thing with Davy Burke there is maybe does he drop into midfield and Pádraig go sweeping? If that's the case, that could be another option. Now you just don't know whether management are going to persist with the sweeper or not. We can only speculate at this point, but looks you'd be happy with the team. It's probably good. Hart will strengthen back there, a corner back as well. He had a good show on last time out when he came on against Stone Cody. He quietened him. I suppose the only other real change we have is probably Conor Cooney being pushed on into attack in the inside line. Interested to see how he gets on. He's a great finisher when he does get chances, even though he might have passed up on 1 or 2 point scoring opportunities so far this year. But you'd be confident in him if he did get a chance that he would probably more than likely stick it. So that's another interesting aspect there. Just other than what you said, it's likely to be the. It's likely to be, this is probably pretty much what it's going to line up as now. So we shouldn't expect too many curveballs before throw-in. There is doubts about, obviously, Pádraig Mannion's fitness after the last day. There's a word circulating around that, that shoulder injury he picked up against Kilkenny was a bit more severe than thought. But he is...
severe at the time, anyhow. Geez.
Yeah. Jesus, yeah. It was our worry after conceding 2 goals. I think we looked at each other and we said, Jesus Christ, after conceding 2 goals and then to lose your captain, and with Tip coming down the line, it was just a nightmare scenario. But I think he is probably a slight favour to make it, but he would be a big loss if he actually didn't. But I'd imagine if he's anyway right at all, he's likely to start. So please God, he is. What are your own thoughts on the team? I suppose there's probably not a whole pile we can say, other than we know how things are going to be. From this team, just in particular, it's probably likely to be very similar to how we've lined up in the last 2 weeks. Whether we go with a sweeper or we don't, that's probably the only question mark.
Yeah, and you're right in what you're saying there, because the one thing I'd be looking at, I suppose, with half Ireland in this name there is probably a lack of ball winners as such. It's you're relying on Joe there really, like, more so than Cahill and David Burke. So I'd be expecting to have the two-man inside line of Concannon and Whelan, and Cooney to be at worst the man playing in front of those two, and if not, he'll be out under puckouts at the very least, if not playing out in the half hour line, and as you say, hopefully, I hope myself anyhow we don't go with a sweeper. We go, maybe with the three-man midfield that we kind of became accustomed to during the league, which the team maybe indicates that with David Burke named as a wing forward, he could be the one to drop out a bit, and maybe Connor come back out to the half hour line. And as you say, that would free up Cahill and Joe to play more of an attacking role, which is, well, particularly Cahill after the last week. In fairness, Joe was fairly stationary in the half hour line, but Cahill went deep an awful lot. So especially against a team like Tip, I'd like to see Cahill being used as a scorer rather than a forager, as you say. I think we've enough lads to do that. I think he's one of our best strikers, one of our best finishers. So I definitely want to see him holding his position a bit more in the half hour line. So I'd be hoping for a three-man midfield, maybe of Porrick, Johnny, and David Burke, and then the half hour line of Cahill, Joe, and Connor, and inside Connor Whelan and Concannon. That's the shape up I'd be hoping for out of it anyhow. Hard to argue with our back six. You'd be fairly confident in those guys going up against whatever Tipper wants to throw at them. It's going to be, they're going to have a mix, as we know, of scorers, and kind of, they probably went with too many scorers the first day against Limerick, and they've it mixed up since, so that probably suits them better this time of year as well. So there's different challenges for Galway to face there. But after what they did, I suppose, the last day, especially the third quarter is the one you really want to look at for Galway, in that they out-hurled their men, but they were also disciplined in doing it, which is, they out-hurled them in the first half as well, but they just weren't as disciplined. Those cheap frees giving away 10, as we mentioned in the show earlier on in the week. So that third quarter, Kilkenny only got off 3 shots, and Galway conceded maybe 1 free in that time. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly, but that's what you want to see for a 70-minute performance this time, and if you do, you'd be confident enough. But no, look, hard to argue with it. One other thing I quite like about what the management are doing, if you look at the 26, you see like the likes of Jam Mannion is in there this week, and and Jack Grealish as well. So he's changing up the last couple of men on the squad every week. You had Sean Blaine there last week, and he's gone this week. And purely, I reckon that's down to giving lads a taste of it, what it's like on match day, because as we know, there's been lots said over the last few days, you're only allowed to bring the 26. So I like that he's not going with the same 26 every day, because there's a 26-man squad there, but there's a few lads on that aren't going to see game time. Just purely down to inexperience, and that at this stage of the championship, he probably has his 20 or 22 in mind, that's his match day squad as such. But it's important to give the likes of the Jam Onions and that the exposure to a game day like this, and hopefully that'll help his development over the next year or two as well.
Yeah. I probably agree with that, because if we were likely to see Jam Onion, no, he could easily come on at the weekend, but if we were likely to see him, I think Croke Park might have suited him a bit more, nicer surface than Limerick at the weekend, where it's likely to be heavy going. And I haven't actually checked the weather forecast, but looking out there, during the day today, it probably didn't look too hot, but that's something we definitely have to take note of as well, is the ground. Like Limerick or Tipperary have played in Limerick last weekend, and they've actually managed to get a victory, whereas this is something we haven't been tried and tested on so far. Even if it was Páirc Uí Chaoimh, it would have been a similar kind of surface to Croke Park, but this one is a hell of a lot different. So it's going to, well, in one sense, I suppose, if nothing else, it'll probably suit us, because we are a physical team. Just looking at that there, pound for pound, we're probably a bigger team than Tip. So and more physical. So you'd imagine the ground would kind of suit us, but whether you would alluded on it before we came on the show here, the man marking rule. That I think the only Kennan and Dahi, Other than that, Tip are both very fluid in defence, and I suppose Galway are as well. And I suppose they'll probably just go with that kind of setup and see whoever comes in on top of them. And provided how the battles are going in the matchups, they can always switch it up from there. But you'd be confident, you'd be confident that back six, back seven to do a job. And if Porrick does drop in, it just adds, maybe even with the wind or without the wind, should I say, even if you drop back for 35 minutes and then we pushed on, that'd be something there in itself. Very interesting to see tactically how this go again, because under Mihal, you were probably very certain of an orthodox 15, and if another team gave us up, if they gave us a sweeper, we would take it all right. But other than that, it was, you knew what kind of lineup we were going to go with. We're still kind of coming to grips with the way Shane O'Neill and his management team like to set up, and they've been a bit different so far, in how they've set up across their games. So, I suppose one key point will be, getting good quality ball into Whelan and Kilcannon to do the damage inside, because you fancy them. I know Seamus Kennedy and Barry Heffernan are likely to be back for Tip, but whether they have 70 minutes in them or whether they're thrown in from the start, it remains to be seen, regardless if they're named or not. So getting good quality ball into them is key, and you expect probably a small bit more out of your Conor Whelans. I know he had 2 points the last day, but probably just a small bit more from in possession. And Cathal Mannion, another player that could have a huge bearing in the game and could be capable of being a match winner on his own. It'll be interesting to see what kind of way they line up as well, and just tactically who would you earmark if you were Liam Sheedy for Joe, we'll say, or for Whelan? What kind of way would you fancy seeing them, Patrick, if you were a Tip point of view?
See, traditional Galway Tip games, it's never it's not about, I suppose, matchups as much as it would be in other sort of teams coming up against each other. Would say, the importance of Galway getting their matchups right against Kilkenny last week, would say, it was critical. It should have been to the outcome, but we're over it now. We'll forget about it now. But Tip and Galway games, they're often more just kind of off the cuff, just go out and hurl sort of approaches, and it might come across that way on the television anyhow. But you'll be sure there'll be plenty thought about it this week. But from a Tip perspective, it'd be interesting to see, will Ronan Maher start on the full back line, or will he go back out to the half back line with the inclusion? I suppose they've more strength and depth there this week now as well. So is he maybe going to pick up Whelan? Interesting sort of a battle. You'd certainly fancy Connor if he gets ball in hand. Certainly under the 50-50 ball, you say Ronan Maher has a chance of breaking even. But if once Whelan gets it in hand, and even low ball, I think he could do a lot of damage on him. Joe, I think they're probably flexible enough on Joe, and that you could see either Brendan or Porrick maybe picking him up and being, different sort of players, but still both of the attributes, you'd say, if they're hurling well, because they haven't hurled that well so far. But if they're hurling well, you'd say both of the attributes to maybe break even there. So, and then a couple lads with pace, the likes of Cathal Barrett and Alan Flynn, are they sort of fellas? Probably one of them will be on Kilcannon with any chance to shove another one out in Cathal Mannion or something, maybe. That's what remains to be seen. But certainly plenty of interesting subplots to develop, but I wouldn't be surprised if it just goes out and it lines out very similar to how it comes out on the programme as well, just as you mentioned about the Gaelic ground and the impact that's going to have on the game, both the conditions on the day itself and the state of the field. I suppose one thing that would offer a bit of confidence is the league game in Salthill, where when the worse the conditions got in that second half, the better Galway got, and the less Tip wanted to know about it, to be honest. So in fairness, that's not going to be the story this week. It's not going to be a case of Tip packing up and heading for the rest of them 10-15 minutes early, because that was only league, and there's obviously a lot more on the line here, and they'll be far more up for it. But that did offer confidence in that Galway were so effective in the poor conditions, racked up a huge score, 321 that they put up. So that's certainly a big positive to take from it. And even the likes of smaller, like Evan Nyden was excellent that day, and he wasn't hindered by the conditions where you'd say, that's not going to suit him or whatnot. I suppose they showed a bit of versatility and put a bit of grit between the teeth that day, so you'd be hoping they'll be bringing plenty of that on Saturday as well. But just to finish up, I suppose, we won't delay, because we haven't that much time for people to get listened to this because it would nearly throw in, especially tomorrow, you know. So, confident of getting the result, David?
I don't know. I absolutely hate playing Tip. So you would be like you just have to be. You know, there's no other point in saying you're not. Like I do think there's absolutely nothing in it. I do think that's, you know, the smallest of margins could decide. It could be a game where, you know, if Galway could get a couple of goals, you'd be very, very confident in them getting the win. It's just a matter of creating the goal chances, and when we do create them, actually taking them. So yeah, if Galway can get goals, you'd be very, very confident of them winning, because I do think they have maybe slightly a small bit more, you know, threat, you know, all over. And with a player like Joe as well, I suppose they have Kenlon, but he's not really firing in all cylinders so far. Now he's working his socks off as captain, but he's not firing on the same level that maybe Joe is at the moment. And we probably have Joe as a marquee player, probably just a small bit more further on at the moment. So I put it down to maybe that. You'd hope it isn't a game of freeze and Johnny Murphy's in charge, and he had a bit of a mayor there. I think in Wexford and Dublin early on in the year. So you'd hope it's not, you know, we're not a case of seeing 50 or 60 frees, and maybe it's let flow a small bit, you know. But yeah, I go for Galway. After the disappointment last weekend, it'd be great if they bounce back. But yourself, you're going to go with Galway?
Yeah, we have to go Galway anyhow, no matter what. Like, but we could be taking on the rest of Ireland, and you'd still have to go for Galway. But yeah, no, look, I think it all depends on how you bounce back during the week, like, you know, and recovery and everything. That would obviously been very important for the first few days, but it's the same for both teams, so they'll both be coming into it in fairly good fettle in that regard. And it's about the mental bounce back, really, of, you know, setting aside the Kilkenny defeat, the disappointment of it, and I suppose the manner of the defeat, more so than the actual defeat itself, you know. And how they bounce back from that, I'd say, and how they look at this as an opportunity, I suppose, to, you know, get one over on Tip and move on then and have a crack at Limerick, who, you know, we're probably going to be in the picture in any case, no matter how last week went, you know. So if they bounce back like that and they start off with a bit of a spring in their step, you know, would definitely be confident enough of a win, please God. So hopefully we have a review show and a preview show and a team announcement show to bring you next week. So plenty of work for us, but we're loving it. So please God, we have a few more weeks of it to go. So yeah, no, we'll leave it there for now, and hopefully we get a good game tomorrow, and we've a happy review show and positive stats to bring you on Monday evening or Tuesday morning whenever we get it out. So until then, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the weekend's action, and chat to you next week.